Hey everyone, it is Thursday, July 28th, 2022. Welcome to TechTO Quick Takes. I'm your host, Alex Riley, and here are today's headlines. We chat through more layoffs as Shopify lays off 10% of staff. We'll meet another insider from the TechTO community as part of our Insider Spotlight segment. And finally, our professional service firms, the new acquirers in tech. We'll find out from Alex Norman. Hey,
Hey Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Maybe we'll hear in the background, but it seems like there's some fire testing in your place.
Yeah, of all the days to do fire alarm testing in my condo, it's today. So I'm going to do my best to kind of mute and speak over that. Why don't we just get right into the news? Sadly, here we are talking about more layoffs in the Canadian tech sector. We had said that we weren't really going to focus too much on talking about it on this show. So why is the Shopify news so important, and why are we wanting to discuss it on the show?
So Alex, you're correct. We've mentioned previously we don't want to go into every layoff that happens. They're going to happen. This is more a macro thing. It doesn't have any company specific reasons, but um, I feel compelled to go deep into what this means and why this is happening for Shopify for several reasons. First of all, Canada has a history of rising tech champions that quickly fall. There's been Nortel and BlackBerry. So Nortel in the 2000s, BlackBerry about 5 to 8 years later, they quickly became world beaters. Everyone said, "Oh, look, Canada's on the map. Look what Nortel and BlackBerry is doing," and they quickly disappeared. Shopify has taken that position. It's now the company when people realize they're Canadian, associated with the Canadian tech ecosystem. Canada tech seems to be finally getting traction worldwide, and lots of people have been around for a while have this dread that Shopify will vanish overnight and it's going to look bad in the ecosystem. So that's the first thing. Second thing is there's two bellwether companies that represent e-commerce and its future. So it gives insight into where e-commerce is going. The second one is a little known company called Amazon out of Seattle. We won't mention them again because Shopify people don't love it. The third thing is just the sheer number of layoffs. This is 10% of Shopify. It's 1,000 people. I know this is a global layoff, so it's not all in Canada, but it's still a large number of Canadian tech people. And most people that live in Toronto, Waterloo, or Ottawa probably know a Shopify person that's being laid off. So, instead of having an awkward conversation with them about what went on, it's good to have that awkward conversation with me and you.
And I want to just double click on the Nortel and BlackBerry stuff specifically. So, kind of a two-parter question. How is Shopify similar to and also different from the Nortel and BlackBerry situation?
Okay, so let's start off with how they're different. Shopify is a software platform where Nortel and BlackBerry were hardware businesses. This has several different long-term competitive advantages for Shopify, including Shopify is building a platform with a strong ecosystem, and their customers keep on using it monthly. The platform keeps them sucked in, so customers are much more. They're paying for it every month. They're much more likely to stay. There's a recurring revenue, and you can predict to a certain extent where your revenue is going. This is versus a hardware business, which is episodic. There's new generations of hardware. So BlackBerry was leapt by the iPhone and touchscreens and by basically iPhone and Android. And so it's very hard to catch up. Your customer demand can disappear. Nortel's networks. You miss a new generation of technology for networking and you're basically done. Your business evaporates overnight. And then there's another strong difference where software businesses have high gross margins and hypothetically lower CapEx requirements, while hardware companies have to continuously invest a lot in historically building their technology. That's not true now, but when these companies existed. So if you look at Nortel, BlackBerry, they had to be cutting edge technology. They had to invest a lot in it and had to get every generation right. They couldn't miss. There would be no reprieve. Shopify has much higher margins that it can reinvest. It has an ecosystem and much more visible recurring revenue. If it misses the technology trend, it will have a slow decline and have a chance to catch up. What's different is Shopify seems to have a more ambitious culture. It's explicitly focused on being a world beater. It's being proudly Canadian, and it wants to be the acquirer. It wants to be the one that sort of lays the flag out. We are the e-commerce leader. Like they want to beat Amazon. They want to beat anyone. I'd say Nortel and BlackBerry were competitive, but not nearly as much, and I think that has an impact. Second of all, the customers, are less concentrated because they're typically SMB. So no one customer can just take a big chunk of their business overnight. And I guess the other difference is they have long-term tailwinds versus episodic spikes. So e-commerce is going to continue to grow no matter what. Now, what's similar? Both represents the hope and dreams of our tech community with, uh, with one important difference. When Nortel and BlackBerry, they sort of, when they disappeared, who was next in wing to take over and be our, flag bearer? Maybe OpenText. Now, if Shopify takes a step back, we have Lightspeed, we have Trulio, we have Ada, we have lots of companies there. So, but in all cases, BlackBerry, Nortel, and Shopify, if you said which is a Canadian tech company you're most proud of, almost 98% Canadians would identify them. So that's one big similarity. Likewise, all non-tech stakeholders in the country use them as a barometer for what's going on with Canadian tech. If Shopify to have significant troubles for 18, 24 months, to be a lot of people that were supporters of what's going in Canadian tech would now be down on and say we shouldn't be investing time. It's not the way. It's not our future. Let's go back to natural resources. The other thing in common is their market caps, and that's like the value of the company on the public markets, went through the roof during a period of hype about the tech market. And then they quickly significantly decreased in value. Hopefully Shopify can be different here and they can have a huge rebound and surpass that previous market cap maximum.
And I would agree with that. I think when a lot of people think about kind of the companies that have helped put Canada and the tech ecosystem here on the map, Shopify would definitely be one of those names that would be mentioned. I just want to maybe dial in a little bit to what this announcement means overall for e-commerce.
Well, I think there's been a leaked memo that Toby sent to his employees. And he said, basically said that everyone that thought e-commerce demand was pulled forward by 5 to 10 years. But in retrospect, it appears more to be a blip and demand has returned to the long-term trend. Now, let's be clear, that trend is increasing market share for e-commerce, which is offline. But, what it means is in the short run, they probably overinvested in people. So that means they have to reduce their staff and there's going to be headwinds in the short term for e-commerce. The other potential issue that we may or may not be heading into recession. So if we're heading into recession, e-commerce in particular is vulnerable because lots of stuff like apparel, toys are the first things consumers cut back on when their disposable income decreases. So you have two headwinds coming. One is you thought you jumped 5 to 10 years forward in demand, but really was like a blip. And now you're going back to historical trend lines. And second of all, you may have additional headwind of a potential recession coming in. So huge overinvestment by Shopify and probably a lot of other e-commerces. You can see this in the impact on Shopify where they announced second quarter earnings and they lost $1 for every dollar of revenue. So that means if they made $1 in revenue, they spent $2. What's not clear, what does this mean for some sectors of e-commerce, particularly online to offline retail? So orders from a Harry Rosen store, orders of food like Instacart, those might be more, and I haven't seen stats there, but I think those might have been pulled forward 2-3 years, not 5-10, but you may have seen some patterns change there.
Right. And just to go back to the layoffs, obviously not everyone or every role was necessarily impacted, but who was impacted directly with these layoffs?
So what was particularly interested was that product team / engineers were spared. It seems like Shopify is continuing to invest in building their product and improving it. And they cut down on support staff that either doing sales and marketing or recruitment or, they have an internal video production team. So anyone that was not core to building the product was impacted, while the product people seem to be pretty much spared.
And I mean, lastly, what can we expect out of Shopify in the near future?
Well, I don't think this is unique to Shopify. And I think this is something you're going to see across all later stage companies or public companies. There's pressure to improve margins and capital is more expensive. When capital's cheap, it's very easy to just start doing more and more and vertically integrating more because it's easy to get return on capital and you get rewarded for that. When it's getting more expensive, you have to focus. And so what I guess this implies for Shopify, and we'll see announcements over this in the next 12 to 24 months. Again, no insider information. This is just my speculation. Is you're going to see two what look like contradictory moves, but they're still driven by this. One is they're going to be, encouraged to be less vertically integrated and focus more. So anything that has worse margins on software or is less capital efficient and is not 100% core to their core business will be jettisoned. So if my guess is right now, someone's looking at Shopify Capital, that's a part of the business that lends to consumers that are using their platform. And I could see that sold to a potential partner or even shut down. So Why would Shopify do this? They could basically sell this to a third party, get some equity in them, provide them with a distribution, and then get a revenue share off that margin. So what does that do for a business? It lowers the capital required overall for Shopify, allows them still to benefit from that business. So it's actually a higher return on investment. It allows an expert that's doing it to be just focused on it, and it basically overall less capital, better margins, and Shopify still benefits from it. The flip side is Shopify has a publicly traded shares, which is a currency. They still have a strong balance sheet. And there's a lot of late stage e-commerce related companies that raise a D round or E round and now down 70%. And Shopify may be able to buy instead of build really cost effectively and see an immediate return on their investment. So they might be able to buy something for 2 times earnings, plug it into their system, and make that worth 20 times. And it's basically getting something that would cost them dollars to build for 20 cents. So I think you're going to see a changing around the core of what Shopify focuses on. One, it's going to jettison businesses that are not strategic, but are nice to have, and let someone that's better at it do it more cost effectively and find a way to extract rent. And then they're going to also have some strategic purchases where it allows them to expand their business because they can get it much more cost effectively than they would have 24 months ago.
Right. Okay, I lied. So I have one more question for you.
Okay.
There's a lot of folks that are listening that, this news is obviously causing a lot of anxiety and nerves, most likely for a lot of individuals. So what are the takeaways for our community? What would you want to share with folks that are listening?
First, keep calm and carry on. Shopify will be here for years to come, and we'll do a great job representing Canada on a global stage. For Shopify employees, let's let that go. This is not their fault. We've said it before. Changes happen. There's 1,000 people let go. They're now available to hire. If you're looking for staff, you should be looking at Shopify profiles on LinkedIn and Twitter. A lot of them are very vocal. You can pick up some great people and make sure they're not employed for a long time. As a side note, at Tech2Go, we're offering a first year free on our annual insider membership to anyone who has recently been laid off. We'll link how to sign up in our show notes for this episode. So if you're one of those Shopify folk or someone else that's just being let go, we want to help you get support from the community. We want to help sure that you can make that transition. So feel free to take advantage of that. And finally, for e-commerce startups, revisit your plans as the next 24 months will be tough. For potential entrepreneurs, there may be interesting opportunities opening up to do something better that Amazon Shopify would have tried to do before, but now are not going to have the ability to focus on. So if you already exist, make sure you've staffed right, that you have the ability to get through 24 months, which might be choppy. If you're thinking about an e-commerce opportunity, there might be an opening that wasn't there before. So this took a lot of time to analyze, but I thought we had to go through this because I think everyone's talking about it the last 24 hours.
Absolutely. I think this was very important and very relevant. So keep an eye out on LinkedIn for those folks, great talent out of Shopify. And speaking of just the initiative and linking that in the show notes, another place that you can find out more about what we're doing at Tech2Go to support the ecosystem. We do often share the initiative in our newsletter. If you don't already subscribe, you can do so at tech2go.org/newsletter. We also post jobs on Wednesdays, so a great place to kind of keep an eye out on what is available, the companies that you'd want to be working for, how to take your career to the next level. Is there anything standing out to you right now, Alex?
Well, I think there's still a lot more opportunities than people expect. What all the tension from the media goes to these large companies that are reducing numbers, there's a ton of startups looking to hire. So look at the newsletter. We try to curate interesting companies that we think have a great future. Again, can't guarantee anything about their future, but at least we think these are great opportunities. So check them out on Wednesdays.
Definitely. Perfect. So great segue into what we're going to be talking about next as part of our Insider Spotlight segment. We do have a Tech2 Insider joining us today for this segment. New part of Quick Takes, we feature insiders from our community who are either looking to hire for their companies, looking for opportunities, or are new to Canada and looking to share their goals for employment or mentorship or what have you. So would like to invite Claire to join us. Hi, Claire.
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
Hi, Claire. Great to meet you. I think you're located in Toronto, right?
Yes, I'm in Little Portugal. Lucky
Excellent.
enough.
One of my favorite parts to go out and have a meal on the weekends. Thanks for taking the time. Can you give us 30-second highlights of your career? What have you done? What makes you awesome at what you do?
Well, I'd say just I spent most of my career in Belgium and in Luxembourg. So I got here 7 weeks ago.
Oh, welcome.
Well, thank you. Very happy to be here. And I've worked mostly in like across different industries. I've worked in big corp, in the beer industry, in nonprofit. I've worked in a startup. I've worked in sales, marketing, and product. But I'd say overall, my superpower is probably just to bring structure and clarity to a team, to make sure that everybody knows what they need to do and how to bring it beautifully together. Yeah.
I love that. I know I always look for team members that can do that, because if you know me, you get to know me, I am completely unstructured. What do you want to do next?
Right now, I'm looking for roles in product. So ideally, something like a product manager, simply because I worked in product 2 years ago and I really loved it. It's super end to end, very challenging. If you're a creative person like me and you get bored easily,
Yeah.
great job to have. And ideally, I'm looking at companies that have like a social or environmental impact, just because, if you work in product, you have to not only love the problem you're solving, but you have to sort of be obsessed with it and want it to be solved. So, can be in health, it can be in education, climate tech. There's tons of things that are.
You want to be focused on the consumer, as the end user being a consumer or business?
I've applied for both. It depends a little bit on like what they do.
So it's mission driven. So if you like the mission, that's what gets you excited. How are you hoping to leverage the community for your goals? How can the community help you?
Well, I've used it a fair bit already. I have to say it's a super powerful like community. It's like coming from a place in Europe, people don't network. Here, people network and they really help each other. So I've been using it to connect with people in product, just to get like insights into how the scene looks like, how to connect with people, how to get into the product scene here. So there's people that have been like, I found mentors through it. I think another way I'm trying to leverage it is trying to connect with some people that work in the impact space, which is a bit harder because I can't really word search impact in the directory. I can word search like product, that works. But so yeah, I'm using it for these two, and honestly, lots of the connections I've made, it's not really for jobs, it's just to meet people. And
I'm going to skip one of the questions to get to the most important one. If someone's watching or listening to this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'd say on LinkedIn. That's probably the best, because they're looking like all the information they need there.
And so if they're looking for LinkedIn, what's the URL? Do you know it offhand?
It's probably just Claire Molitor. So
how do you spell your last name? How do you spell your name so people that are listening can get it?
Molitor.
Great. And we'll include a link in our show notes. Claire, thank you so much for joining Tech2O. We help to get you involved in the community, get you a job you like. And I'm sure some people will be reaching out to you after seeing you or hearing from you. Thank you so much, Claire.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. That was great. And as Alex said, we will make sure we link how to connect with Claire in our show notes. Before we get to our next headline, we would like to shout out Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program at the Smith School, who are sponsoring today's episode. Harnessing AI's potential for competitive performance requires a new type of professional, one who not only understands the capacity of the science, but has the expertise to apply it to organizational needs and strategies. The Master of Management in Artificial Intelligence program from Queen's University's Smith School of Business will help you develop the skills to navigate the ethical, economic, and societal implications of AI implementation. This 12-month program can be completed while you continue to work full-time. Visit smithqueens.com/AI degree to learn more about how you can join their next class.
So just before we jump to the next thing, I think thinking about the ethical and societal impacts of AI implementation is extremely important in today's society. So I think if you're looking at working with AI, this is actually a pretty cool course.
Absolutely. And I will link the smithqueens.com/AI degree link in our show notes as well. Definitely check it out. Thank you to them for sponsoring this episode. Next headline, Alex, are professional service firms the new acquirers in tech? And I ask this simply about the Accenture. The Accenture news, rather. They acquired 2 Canadian tech companies this past month. So who did they acquire and why?
So Accenture seems to like Canada, or I mean, I assume this is Accenture Canada that did this, but they bought Regina-based Solvera, and Solvera provides services across several platforms, including ServiceNow, Microsoft, and SAP platforms. This looks like an acquisition of talent and customers. So hey, this looks like 450 more like professional service people, or that they can probably serve. There's customers here that maybe they can cross sell into, and they bought Cambridge-based Eclipses, which provides automated manufacturing systems for companies in traditional manufacturing industries. So basically, it's a mix of IoT and robotics. And this looks like another sort of like knowledge and people acquisition. This firm had 800 people.
I don't believe this was Accenture's first Canadian acquisition either. They have more, don't they?
Yeah, this is their 6th and 7th. They've been shopping around.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
And just overall, from your perspective, what's going on here?
So
news.
I think this reflects more what professional firms are as an industry. So I worked for part of my career in investment banking and in consulting, and one reason people put up with their lower level jobs is they can go be partner, or the equivalent of a partner. And the way the professional services can get you to be partners, they need to grow. They need to open new geographic areas. They need to have new areas of focus, because if they don't grow, there's no path for me to become a partner or a junior person to become a partner. And so I think their models have reached maturity and they're in a risk of breaking. So what does this mean? They're looking always for new customers, new insights, new geographies. And it's been incredibly hard to get the talent and know-how in the current environment, because you may have heard that people are hard to hire. As such, what's going on here is Accenture's like, okay, you serve ServiceNow and Microsoft platforms, can consult on that. We don't have that knowledge. You have new customers. We're going to acquire you, and I'll grow and make us grow faster. I think the flip side is you have a lot of startups that have an idea. They do, start doing customer development. It starts off with looking like professional services. They say, okay, it's professional services. We're going to add SaaS on later, but they never make that transition either, because it's hard. Like it's hard to go from doing professional services to SaaS, or that every customer wants something to be customized and becomes a consulting firm. Basically, they won't call it that. They'll call it a startup. So what happens is these companies have two choices. Either we self-fund, which is difficult, because if you don't have the right ratio of people to jobs, either you overpromise, underdeliver, or you you're bleeding cash because you have too many people, and you can't raise money because it doesn't look like a product. And so Accenture's of the world and professional service firms can offer quite lucrative exits for these founders and these teams. So I think you're having two different types of the acquiree and acquirer both have problems, and they solve it for each other. So you're seeing more professional service like companies get acquired, startups get acquired by these professional service firms.
Lastly, takeaways for our community from this news.
It's interesting. I would say, Accenture's and the professional service firms are going to get a lot more attention right now, because I think they've been consistently looking at acquiring companies, and they do it they go in waves. And why they're getting more attention right now is you're going to see just a lot more until, despite what I said about Shopify using their shares to buy, I think you're still in a point where a volatility, until that settles down, you're not going to see many acquisitions go through. So the professional service firms buying stuff, and probably private equity firms buying, are going to get a lot more attention. I think if you have a product company, you're going to see professional service firms buy them. They're trying to figure that model out. Like I know over the last several years, McKinsey's bought a couple of companies in Canada that are pure products and not services. So I think you're seeing the professionals. This is more about the professional service firms than the startup ecosystem. They're changing their model, looking for growth. They're going to start nibbling and buying stuff, and it's going to be much more prevalent in the next 3 to 6 months, simply because a lot less action going on. And I think, this gives some startups, hey, you're stuck in professional service, you can't build a product. There might be a company, you might be one of sniffing around these professional service firms and see if they want to buy your what you've become.
Right. Oh, thanks, Alex. Just to be conscious of time, I want to make sure that we showcase what we have coming up for our community. August 11th, we have TechTO Marketing at 111. Very excited for that. Full list of speakers, some of the top marketing leads and people working in the industry. So a great place to learn from them and network as well. We also have on August 25th, TechTO Health. So excited to have these back in real life again. That one is also at 111. Tickets for both available on our social media and on our website. Alex, thank you so much as always for breaking down the news for us. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening to this episode, and share your takes with us on the week in Canadian tech. We'll see you on the inside.
We're in the business of delivering impossible things. We're in the business of delivering things that nobody's ever seen before.
If you build that culture, you'll come up with really cool and innovative stuff, and literally could be in the next multi-billion-dollar idea.
So this conversation is largely going to be about scaling yourself and scaling your leadership team.
I want to talk about one of the biggest struggles that I think a lot of startups face early on, which is building initial traction.